Hi, and welcome to the MindUr Business Podcast with Sarah Spencer.
And that's why I'm so keen to keep this conversation open, because you're not alone in feeling like this or having these things happen to you, and it doesn't make it right. And we need to stand up and start calling this behaviour out.
So thanks for obviously taking time out your day to chat with me and obviously answer a couple of questions in terms of your route and your path and what's led you to be, I guess, quite an advocate in the industry.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Thanks for reaching out. Like you said, I think it's really important to take any opportunity you can to talk about these issues, and so it does just keep becoming a continuous dialogue, because I do think it's important.
And in terms of your background,
I
mean, I'll probably get into a little bit more, but are you able to just talk me through your background in terms of even from a younger education, in primary education, and what led you down the path of, what was your main influences of wanting to be a barrister?
So my route was, I started doing professional performing arts when I was 7 years old. So I started performing in West End tours of Joseph and His Main Technicolor Dreamcoat, Scrooge, programs, productions like that. And I did that from probably 7 till about 18. So for 11 years, I was effectively a professional actress, and I loved it. But as I was getting older, I'd spent years, the best part of a decade doing it. It just became a bit monotonous for me. It was we were doing 8 shows a week. I'd miss school to do these shows. So I'd do 2 shows on a Wednesday, a matinee and an evening, 2 shows on a Saturday, normally either rehearsal, rest day, Sunday, and then go again on the Monday. So, and that was my whole life growing up. And I always knew I wanted to be a performer in some aspect, but it wasn't until I saw what a barrister was, and that was from watching television, that I realised that you effectively are performing every day, but also every day is different. Because what I struggled with acting was that every day was exactly the same. You go to the stage, the theatre, you'd rehearse, you'd warm up, you'd do your vocals, you do your notes from the performance before, and then you perform again. But being a barrister is like putting on a performance every day, but every day there's new challenges, there's new facts, there's new evidence. And so for me, it was a combination of having my acting background, but also the intellectual stimulation of being a lawyer as well. So it was just a perfect combination for me. And once I saw that it was a real job, I just had to find out how to do it, because I wanted to be a barrister.
Do you think that, obviously you're quite realistic in terms of what a barrister, it entails to be a barrister, but do you think that at any point you thought, and this is such a common theme, I think, when people think of lawyers, they think of suits, they think of silk, they think it's a glamorous lifestyle. Did you think that going into it, or was there any moments where you thought, oh God, this is not what I signed up to do, or this is not as glamorous?
I can't remember what television programme I was watching, but it involved barristers swanning around court in a wig and gown, and I thought it was brilliant. So I Googled and learned how to do it. I knew I needed to get a law degree of some description. I then needed to do the bar professional training course. So it kind of pushes you in a trajectory that you just get it done. And it was almost like having blinkers on at that point. I was just sort of ticking off a checklist of how to become a barrister. I don't think I really understood and appreciated the reality of being a barrister until I started my pupillage year. Because I realised that although the glamour of the wig and gown is brilliant, that is the tip of the iceberg, and behind the scenes is a lot of labour, late nights, hard work, going through documents. And I suppose that's what pupillage was brilliant for. It gave you the reality of what being a barrister was. I'd seen bits on mini pupillages and work experience, but then I think when you do a mini pupillage, they want to give you the best part of being a barrister. So you don't see as much the late night in chambers, the sifting through thousands of documents. So pupillage probably was the first reality, and pupillage is hard. It's so hard to get it in the first place. But then once you've got it, you think you've done everything you need to do. But in reality, the hard work doesn't start until you get pupillage, I would say. so yeah, that was really eye-opening to me, because it's hard. It's a hard job, and everyone's going through it at the same time.
And it's such a competitive space as well. So that process of securing a pupillage in the first place, or even a mini pupillage, you know, is so competitive. And it takes persistence to get that and secure that. Had someone had told you while you were in law school that it would have took the persistence that in reality it did, and it entailed what it does, do you think that you would have still made the decision to go down that route, or do you think that you would have took a different route?
No, I think I would have always pursued being a barrister, because I was determined to do it, and I knew that it was a really brilliant match for me, my personality. I was told at law school just how competitive it was. You know, they didn't shy away from saying, you know, this is the statistics, this is the likelihood of you getting pupillage your first go, your first try, your second try, or even at all. And I remember barristers were coming in to give us talks at law school, and, you know, some of them, it took 7-8 years to get it. And they had to apply to their inn to extend, because I think the period is 5 years, you've got to apply to get it. And then you can write to your inn and the BSB, and I think they can extend it. So I knew it was competitive. What I didn't anticipate was the emotional toll it would take on me, because you pour everything into these applications, and they're not short applications. I think the average length is about 19 pages on the pupillage gateway. So, you know, they're lengthy applications. They want all of your academic qualifications, pretty much everything you've ever done work experience wise. But then the thing of, you've got to stand out. And I remember writing my application saying, but everything I've done, you know, the grades, the mini pupillages, everyone else has done. So you're trying to sell yourself in a box that's limited by characters. And then once you've got through that paper sift, then the interviews are intense, and you're just fired questions by a panel. And I think once you've been invested in a chambers, and you've got to the second round, or sometimes third round, depending on the set of chambers, and then it's a rejection, you do just feel emotionally drained, because you've been putting your effort every day into these interviews, into applications, on top of studying full time.
Yeah.
So I
think I've seen that you ended up going over to the States.
Yeah.
To differentiate your application from the rest.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm not shy to admit that I did it purely to enhance my pupillage application. And what I found quite astonishing is I wasn't someone who had done barely any work experience. I think I ended up with about 9 or 11 mini pupillages. So I'd done a lot of legal work experience. I'd also worked and done work experience in a solicitor's firm, because they always ask you the question, why a barrister and not a solicitor? So I wanted to use a practical example of why I could say that I prefer to be a barrister. But then the second round, I think it was, I got a rejection, and it was the last chambers I was waiting to hear from, and they rejected me. And because I knew I had a calendar year to fill, because you can only apply once a year, I just thought, oh, what can I possibly do? I can't keep doing mini pupillages. If 9 isn't enough, 10's not going to be satisfactory. And I just thought, what experience can I give that's slightly different, is enjoyable for me, but also is something that not a lot of candidates will have done. So I Googled law firms in Connecticut, because I knew people that lived there, and I thought it's good to have a contact if anything ever went wrong. I Googled law firms in Connecticut, applied, and flew out a couple of weeks later.
And after that, once you returned, was you successful then upon returning and securing a pupillage?
Yes. So I did the best part of a year in Connecticut. I did half my time as a personal injury advocate, and the second half of my time as a criminal defence attorney out there. I came home in the September, and the pupillage window didn't open until the April or the May the following year. So I became a paralegal at a law firm in Birmingham, and paralegaled for 6 months until the pupillage gateway opened, and then applied that year and got pupillage that year. So whether it was a combination of America, or whether it was, you know, I've been a paralegal, you know, every day, so I had that real life experience, I don't know. But every interview I had asked me about America, every single one.
Really? Why is that, do you think?
I think a lot of people are curious because we see a lot of it on television, like Suits, like How to Get Away with Murder, or even just the court cam YouTube shows that you see. And I think people wanted to know whether it was true and real. And I have to say, it absolutely is. It is like being on a film set every day in the courts in America.
Really?
So a lot of people would have it by way of conversation, and I think it was a good way to be focused on law, but also just to ease someone into an interview. So they'd say, you know, what was the best thing about America, or what are the differences between an American courtroom and an English courtroom, or what was the craziest thing you saw out there? And because I was so passionate and I loved my time in America, it was a great way to start the conversation. But I also think it just showed that I had a lot of passion that went above and beyond, you know, the mini pupilages, the mooting, the working in a legal advice clinic, you know, those kind of things.
And do you think that in terms of the ins, do you think that your application would have a bigger sway? I know that everyone says the classic saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Would people be at advantage if their mum and dads were already in the ins and they took the route to follow the parents? Or, you know, was there any ageism, sexism? Did you face any of that during your application process?
So in regards to knowing people, I think that, you know, what I'm quite strong about is that the bar is an old boys club and it is very well connected. I didn't know anyone. I did not know a single lawyer. None of my family are lawyers, none of my friends, parents, aunts and uncles, I didn't know a lawyer. So for me, when I was 16, I didn't think I could be a barrister, because I was thinking you've got to know someone, you know, or you've got to go to Oxford or Cambridge, or your mum and dad have got to be a judge or a lawyer. That's not the case for me. And it's not a case for a lot of barristers that I know. But then on the flip side, there are also a lot of barristers I know that are very well connected in the legal sphere. So I think it must help, because word of mouth travels. Oh, my nephew's applying to your chambers. Oh, is he? We'll look out for him. I think that's got to be true.
Yeah.
Because I've heard too many conversations of nepotism at its finest. In regards to ageism and sexism, I've experienced both on a daily basis now as a practitioner, but as an applicant, the ageism I got a lot. My first year of applications, I was 21, and pretty much a lot of my rejections were, you know, you're just a little bit too inexperienced. You've come straight out of bar school. We just think you need to be a little more well-rounded and, you know, have done some further work experience. You're a bit green. And that all comes down to my age. But I didn't have the opportunity to have done much because I was a full-time student from the age of 4 till 21. So
that's right. And if everyone's got the attitude of, well, you're a bit green and you need experience, well, then there's no way for you to gain the experience to not be green or to not be fresh in the door. So, you know, it's a bit of a catch-22. How are you meant to gain experience and not be green if no one's willing to give you that opportunity?
Exactly. And, you know, it was something I encountered more in America because I was 21 when I went over to America. So I was just legal enough to drink, and I was representing clients, and they would see me and they would be so confused because in Connecticut, you can't do a law degree as an undergraduate. You have to do it as a postgraduate degree. So most law students are 22 when they begin and 25 when they finish. Then they have to do their own training. So for me, walking in younger than their youngest law students, and I'm a qualified barrister, you know, there was a bit of a disconnect. I think they thought I was some child prodigy, but actually we can just do it as an undergrad.
I mean, you said you're 21 when you were applying for your first round of pupillage, so that is very young to be applying. I think most people are normally around 22, 23 when they're first applying, because obviously it takes you 3 years to do your degree, then your year to do your bar, and that usually takes people to the age of about 22, doesn't it? So how did you get to do it at such an early age?
my first application was the May of my bar course, and I'm born in the July. Okay. So I turned 21 in the previous year. So I was almost 22 when I left bar school. But I was 21 when I did my first round of applications and didn't get it. That was the year I got, you're very young, you're fresh out of bar school, all of this. A lot of my peers got it. Well, a handful of my peers got it, but they were a few school years older than me. So I wonder whether that had made a difference, because they had done other things in between undergraduate degree and the bar course, whereas I had gone straight through. The second year was the year I thought, right, I'm going to get it this year. I've done loads of mini pupillages, didn't get it, went to America, and then got it the following year when I was a paralegal at the time. So it took me three years to get it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But that's a lot of persistence and resilience that you've probably built up over that time. And I think in terms of, I mean, I read a statistic a couple of days ago in terms of that representation at the pupillage level. It's 50-50 when, in terms of gender, female, males, when people embark on a pupillage, that is massively diluted when it comes to looking at the QC statistic of 16.8. And it made me wonder why that is. Is that because females are, one, intimidated throughout the process of pupillage, appearing in court and coming up against experienced people? Because we know that females, anyway, as a personality, we're not as confident as men in the workplace. That's just, fact. That's just how we are. It might be, the odd anomaly, but in general, women are less likely to ask for a pay rise, promotions, etc. Obviously, women take time out to start a family if they choose that, and then coming back into practice, never mind the bar, after that, it's not generally supported by majority of the corporate industry. So, I mean, what is your viewpoint on that, as why it's so diluted at the QC level compared to the pupillage level?
I think it's a combination of all of those factors. I think as women, statistically, and for the most part, we are less self-confident and less self-assured. So a man might go for QC, 5 years before his female counterpart, because she might think, oh no, I'm not quite ready. They're not going to allow me to be a QC. Let me leave it a couple of years. So I think that's got to be a factor. Whereas men statistically just think, do you know what? I'm going to try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I also think that childhood, childbearing, pregnancy, maternity, all of that plays an issue, because the part and the problem for women at the bar that are mothers, that I feel, is that this is not a 9-to-5 job. So if you're stuck in court, you're stuck in court. I've seen women frantically texting underneath the court desk, trying to arrange someone to pick up their children from school.
Yeah.
Currently, it's a female issue, and I don't think it should be. It should be a parent issue, whether you're a father or a mother. But from my experience and what I've seen from colleagues, it definitely tends to be a motherhood issue. I also think that because the bar isn't a 9-to-5 insofar as you might get stuck in court, but also the expectations of a barrister, are far beyond what is compatible with raising children. So, for example, I might get a case now for me to be 2 hours away tomorrow morning for a full day trial. That means that tonight for me is spent prepping all night. That is not conducive with me having children that I need to feed, bathe, and put to bed. And, I take my hat off to women in the profession. Female barristers with children are heroes. The way they juggle raising their children, being present for assemblies, school runs, all of this, but then meeting the demands of judges, instructing solicitors, lay clients, all of that at the same time it's a hard task. I think that must be part of the reason why what a lot of women think, I've got a good practice, I'm going to leave it as it is and not go for silk. But also why a lot of women end up dropping out of the profession, just because it is not compatible with raising a child, and the children are the priority.
Yeah, and that's completely understandable, isn't it? But I mean, it is hard because it's not. I think solicitors, you've got billables, you can flexibly reach those billables, still working from home or working flexible hours or working once the kids go to bed and work it around family life. But when you've got to be in a courtroom 9 to 5 and then go and meet clients and business development and all the other the list of jobs that are endless that come on top of just sitting in a courtroom, it becomes hard because you are required to be there in court 9
Absolutely.
to 5. So how do we change this, I guess? I mean, how do you see it improving?
I think it's a mentality that needs to shift. From what I've seen, women are expected to work as if they don't have children, and are expected to raise children as if they don't work. I think it's unreasonable demands that are put on women, and the mentality behind the bar needs to shift. Don't get me wrong, I think it's got a lot better as the years have gone by, but to say that women, it's easy to be a mother and a practicing barrister is far from the truth. I think a lot of it comes from judges, that judges are not flexible or lenient when it comes to, appreciating the reality of a working mother or father, but it does tend to be more of a mother's issue. But also, the way that the nature of this job is that a case can get landed on you, and you are expected to pick it up and run with it. I'm at the very junior end. I rarely say no to cases. Unless I absolutely can't do them, I will go here, there, and everywhere at the drop of a hat, because I'm trying to build my practice. I'm keeping my clerks happy. And also, I do love what I do.
Yeah.
But I am one individual. I don't have children, so I don't have any of those considerations. The scary thing is that a lot of it is ingrained in what the court system is. If you're stuck behind a case, or your case overruns for whatever reason, the fear of someone to ask the judge, you know what, I can't go any further now, we're going to have to come back another day. I've never seen that happen. And a lot of it, I think, does need to come from the top, from the judges down.
It does need to come from the judges down, because I think if I put myself in a position of, look at yourself, you're saying you go travel up and down the country, you'll take whatever case if you absolutely can, and that's to build your portfolio up and build your client book up. So you work years and years to build that steady book up. And I think it's such a competitive space. So I'm just trying to envision putting myself in that person's shoes, where you say, I want to cut court short because I need to go and pick up my child. But then they've probably got the fear in them that they're going to lose that client, because that client might think, well, I want someone who,
prioritizes
over their family life.
Yeah, and you also might be in front of a judge that that his reaction or her reaction is not going to be good to you making that kind of request. But also, if the answer's no, what do? You then risk leaving a child at the school gates if you've not got that support, to call someone. I cannot express how many times I've seen women send that text underneath the court desk, frantically messaging parents, partners, friends, other school moms, can you take my kid home with you for a couple of hours and I'll pick them up from yours? But also another real life experience that I've seen, it was a very good friend of mine from my first set of chambers, was breastfeeding. And we were in a really long trial. The trial was 3.5 weeks, but we were in court every day, all day. And so she got to a point where she needed to express because of the pain she was in.
Yeah.
So she sent a note to the court usher asking for a 15-minute comfort break. Bearing in mind the judge was a woman. The court usher passed the note to the judge, and the judge came to court and said, yes, I'll give a comfort break. So we leave the court. I stay in the court building. a friend of mine runs to the car and goes to express in the car. 3 minutes later, we're all getting called back into court because the judge had deemed that break to be sufficient. So I have to call this woman and say, I'm ever so sorry, we're going back into court. And she hadn't even got to the car yet. So then, because the car park was a couple of minute walk away, so she had to run back to court whilst expressing, put her suit blazer back on, chuck the apparatus in a handbag and go back into court. And she spent the rest of the afternoon in agony. Bearing in mind that this is now about 6:30 in the evening, and we went into court until 7:30, 8 o'clock. So we've been in court almost 12 hours. And I looked at her in physical pain for this job after asking for this adjournment for the reason, and it was just disregarded. And I thought, wow, and that's from a female judge. And I think these are the realities that do happen at the bar.
Yeah.
And it's not right. And I'm an advocate against it, but I think it needs to be a discussion, because people just, unless it affects them, they don't even consider it.
Yeah, I think there's a lack of empathy, isn't there, in general as a whole for women who are left with a life choice of either have a family or have a career, and it's one or the other. It can't be both.
And women that do both do it on minimal sleep, drained, pulled from pillar to post. So it is hard. I mean, for me now, I wouldn't have children at the moment, and that would be because of a career decision.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to risk stepping away and potentially clients forgetting about me. I want to keep going while the momentum's up. And when I've built a stronger, larger foundation, at that point, I'll think about stepping and having some time away to have children.
And you say that, but even probably at that point, you'll be find it so hard to walk away because you'll be so scared that you can't retain your clients.
And that's the fear, isn't it? Yeah. I want to be available to my clients if they need me, so that I'm a reliable barrister. Solicitors can say, Grace always does the best to rearrange a diary to accommodate things like that. I don't want to disappear for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. I don't want that for me. A friend of mine today called me, and it's her wedding coming up, and a male barrister said to her, well, don't get pregnant on your wedding night because we've got a big case in 9 months and I need you for that. And it's just, it's conversations like this all the time, little comments. And
I know that they probably mean nothing by it at all. But it's just overlooked because, don't get me wrong, I know that we're females and it's just how nature built us, that we're the one that is a child bearer. I understand that. But I think when it comes to once the child's born, there could be, different ways to allow women to still succeed professionally and not feel guilty for stepping away from the child for a few hours, a day or two, or, still being able to maintain a family life and be a good mum and also succeed and be very successful in their career.
Yeah.
It's how do we as people in the industry, obviously you've got a massive voice and you've advocated for this for a couple of years now, and you're using your platform to try and create change. But it's how do we educate people who are in the position of being the hiring managers or the CEOs or the people who are QCs or judges? How do we educate them to then create change and create ripples enough in the industry so that a massive change and shifts?
And that's the thing, the short answer is I don't know, other than we keep having this conversation, and over time hopefully the mentality changes so that it's not shocking when a mother has to stop, a female barrister has to sign off at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because she's got a child's assembly in the I don't know, but I just think that the mentality needs to change, and it needs to be more of a parent issue than a female issue, because at the moment it's not a balanced equation even after the child's born from what I've seen. you know, a solicitor that I was against yesterday, she emailed me saying, I'll look at this order tomorrow because I'm not working this afternoon. It's my little boy's birthday. Now, obviously for me, fine, we'll talk tomorrow. Not a problem at all. But it's interesting, would that reception have been the same if it was someone else? Well, you know, I just don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's far from where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what the answer is, to be honest. I don't know if it's a structural shift in terms of the way that chambers are organised, whether they implement more staff to sort of business develop on behalf of people who might be on maternity leave and keep their clients maintained, and relieve some stress of people who are coming back off mat leave, rather than there you go, there's your book of business again and off you go.
I think the beauty of being a barrister though is that is more flexible, because you can say, without dropping down to part-time permanently, you can say, for this week I'm only working 3 days, next week I'm only working 2 days. You know, there is that flexibility. When you're employed, you're either full-time or you're part-time, or you use your annual leave. Those are your options.
Yeah.
With a barrister, because we're self-employed, we can say, do you know what, from now on I don't want to work Fridays. You know,
But
I
if
can't
you
get
get that, it's does that then jeopardise your chances of getting a silk?
I would like to think not. I can't imagine it would. No. I mean, it would be a personal decision. It would be a personal decision on, you know, what your level of income is. You know, some barristers make enough in 3 days that they only need to work 3 days, and that's absolutely fine. The other 2 days they can focus on childcare or whatever they want to do. That's the beauty of being a barrister, is that you have that flexibility up until the point you're in court, and then you're at the hands of the judge. And what we also can't forget is that the courts are under crippling stress at the moment because of the backlog of COVID and funding, and understaffed, overworked. So there's the pressure from the court to get through as many cases as possible. And I think that's felt by barristers, that they almost can't say, well, you know what, if this case isn't finished by 3 o'clock, sir, I'm going to have to go. That they're not going to say that, because the court, you know, the court system is under so much pressure at the moment after COVID, that there's just so much going on at the moment.
And I mean throughout your career, how many times have you thought that shouldn't have happened, or that shouldn't have been said, or that's not okay? I guess, and was there any times where you thought, I don't know if this is for me, or I don't know if I've made the right decision?
Yes, is a short answer. A couple of times it has happened to me. The robing room in a court is what we call the old boys club banter, you know. And I was having this discussion yesterday with a colleague of mine. There is such an ethos of sort of private boys banter that it's actually quite hurtful, because the jokes are never going to be about them. They're never going to be about the white middle-aged man, because the majority of these men making the jokes are white middle-aged men. So often the jokes are at women, at people of colour, people with disability, you know, these protected characteristics that these people don't fall into. During my pupillage, a comment was made to me that I felt like I couldn't say anything about, and didn't say anything about at the time, because I was too scared that I wouldn't get tenancy. So I was in a robing room full of middle-aged men, and I always wear this necklace, always have. And there was a male barrister looking at me, and he was staring at my chest. And I asked him, sorry, what are you looking at? And he said, oh, calm down. I'm only looking at your necklace because I'm thinking of birthday presents for my daughter. I'm not looking at your massive tits.
Wow.
I was a pupil, and he said that in a room full of men who were barristers of 20 plus years cool. And I was so humiliated and mortified, but again, felt silenced, because as a pupil, I didn't want to cause any ripples. I didn't want to report him or make a complaint against him, because I thought that might stop me getting tenancy, because he was very well respected in the career, in the profession. So that was the first time I thought, no, this isn't right. This isn't what I'm paid. I'm not paid to do this. I'm paid to do a job. I don't deserve this, especially from another member of the bar as well. But equally, now I have started to build up a platform, I will go on social media and discuss and post circumstances and situations that happened to me. And there was one a few weeks ago where I was against two men that were about 20 years my senior. I was for claimant, they were both for the defendants. They asked me for a chat before court and I said, yeah, not a problem. That's normal. They ushered me in through a double doors, which I thought was into a conference room. It wasn't. It was into like a dimly lit corridor of the court. And as soon as the door shut behind me, they proceeded to just unleash. They were aggressive, they're intimidating, shouting at me about procedural points, which were out of my control. And the worst point was when I started to defend myself and say, no, that's not quite legally correct. They tried to manipulate me into thinking I got the law wrong. And they were laughing at me, scoffing at me, rolling their eyes at me. And I excused myself and went to the court toilets and cried because I felt so ambushed and so shook up. And I called a silk from my chambers and he was brilliant. He reassured me that I had got the law right. And he also gave me little sort of sound bites to go back and say, to sort of reassert my position of authority in the courtroom. But at the time, I was in a courtroom crying in a court toilet. And that's not right. We're all here to do a job. You can represent your client as hard as you can, and I'll do the same for mine. But we don't need to start playing underhand tactics, manipulation. And it was bullying, it was intimidating, and it was just awful. So it does happen.
Yeah, I think, wow, I mean, even, I think that people think, oh, it's 2022, and comments like that don't get thrown around anymore. And I think because it's been allowed for so long, even when people make it comments, sometimes they don't even realise what's leaving their mouth until someone does pull them up on it. But as you say, if you're a pupil and a senior's talking to you in that way, or does you're in an intimidating situation, I think most women don't want to speak up or don't want to be seen as being rude or
causing a problem. I didn't want to be labelled a problem pupil, because ultimately you go through pupillage to get the golden ticket of tenancy, and I wasn't going to do anything that would risk losing tenancy. So I didn't say anything at the time. I would have loved if another man in that robing room said, well, hang on a minute, that's uncalled for. That would have been brilliant, but no one said it. And the problem is I can't be alone in this, which is why I will use my platform to speak about things like that, because no doubt there are other women in other fields or junior solicitors or trainees or other pupils that have experienced the same thing, and they might be alone thinking, well, has it only happened to me? And that's why I'm so keen to keep this conversation open, because you're not alone in feeling like this or having these things happen to you, and it doesn't make it right. And we need to stand up and start calling this behaviour out.
And so in that circumstance, I guess, younger women that are coming through in the legal industry, studying law degrees, thinking about going to law degrees or about to embark on their pupillage, what would your advice be, even for young males as well, when they're, witness to this behaviour?
So my advice is if you want to go into law, do it. Being a barrister is the best job in the world. I love it. I love every day. So we need more junior women. So that's my first piece of advice, is that if you've got an accent, I always thought my Birmingham accent would hold me back, or if you didn't go to Oxbridge, or you don't know a lawyer, or you're not from a wealthy background of academics and lawyers and whatever, you can still be a lawyer. I'm not from a wealthy family, I'm from Birmingham. I didn't know a lawyer. So 100% go for it, work hard, and you'll do it. That's my first piece of advice. When you're in it and something bad happens to you, tell someone. That's my advice with that. Whether it's someone that you trust in your chambers, someone that you've got that relationship with, or even if there's some committee or initiative, like at my chambers, we have the respect committee. So there is a formal group of people that you can go and talk to if something like this has happened to you. You know, that would have been brilliant for me a few years ago if that existed at the set of chambers I was at. And I just think if you've got that one trusted member that you can speak to, it can make all the difference. So, for example, the silk I called when I was crying in the toilets, he's a man, a very successful QC, and I called him and he was brilliant, you know, and he's escalated that on my behalf. And it feels almost more comfortable in the fact I've got his backing, because again, he's going to be taken more seriously with a complaint like that than I ever would be. Because whether it's of our gender or our experience or the fact that his name stands for a lot, I don't know. But it's just about telling someone that you trust that can do something on your behalf, because it's all well and good for me now out of pupillage and now I'm a tenant to say, even as a pupil, you shouldn't stand for that. But I also appreciate the pressure that pupils, trainees, they feel just to get that, you know, that NQ role or tenancy. You know, they are very real live pressures. So even if you don't report it formally, just tell someone so at least they know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect advice, I guess, and I think it probably will encourage or help a lot of younger women coming through the profession that you are speaking out and offering advice and just offering a little bit of comfort, knowing that it's not just them or they're not being, I guess, it's a pain in the ass, like raising the point or saying something to someone. I mean, since you've been doing this and advocating, what's the response that you've had?
Overwhelmingly positive, supportive. People, I mean, I get direct messages almost every day with people telling me about an experience they've had. Oh, you've posted about this happened to me, you know, and I get that every day. Especially, there was one post that a friend of mine posted about me that went viral. And so the next morning I woke up inundated with messages, and I felt like I'd created this support, this community online, and we could all talk about these things and speak out together, because one big voice is louder than individual voices. But that was the same day that I then ended up in the toilets crying at work 3 hours later. So my day had started like this and then just plummeted. And so it was interesting, you know, from a bit of a sick but psychological analysis, is that I woke up feeling on top of the world, that everyone feels like the same, you know, everyone's rooting for this change, this conversation. And then a few hours later, the reality of being a young female barrister brought me crashing back down to earth again. So the response has been brilliant. And that's why I'm committed to keep talking about this, take any opportunity I can to keep the discussion about the realities of being a young lawyer and the reality of being a young female lawyer. And like you started, behind the glamour of the wig and gown is often sometimes someone who feels quite beaten down, you know, verbally by an opponent. You know, a good friend of mine, she's bold, like she's bolshy, she's confident, you know, she is a strong woman. And she felt like a man was overstepping and mansplaining something to her in court. She'd explained something to a judge. Her male opponent then started explaining exactly the same thing that she just explained to the judge. And she just stopped him and said, "Sorry, Your Honour, I fear my learner friend is about to mansplain all over the thing I've just explained to you." Now that is brilliant, you know, but that takes a certain sort of pizzazz and, you know, power to speak out like that.
I think you've got to be real confident to be able to do that, especially in a room full of other people as well.
100%, especially when someone is a lot older and a lot more experienced than you. But I look to her as a role model because she's, you know, you wouldn't mess with her.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is that I've learned over time is that I have just as much right to be in that courtroom as they do. Yes, they may have more years or more cases under their belt than I do, but actually I'm a barrister in my own right. They're a barrister in their own, and I'm going to fight tooth and nail for my client, whether you like it or not. So it's just reminding yourself, and that's where a bit of the imposter syndrome comes in, which is what I spoke about on my TED talk, is that you've got to battle through it. Because I say and I mean, before, barristers are fierce advocates for their client. That's what their job is. But before you can be a fierce advocate for your client, you have to be a fierce advocate for yourself. And it's getting over that first.
And that is so true, isn't it? I mean, it's not just being a fierce advocate for yourself. I think exactly what you're doing, you're being a fierce advocate, not just for yourself, not just for your clients, but also for other barristers. And you, when you step into the courtroom, they might be your opponent, but when you step out of the courtroom, you're all in the same profession, and you should all be advocating and pulling in the same direction to empower one another.
Absolutely. And I'm in a very lucky position that my chambers are so supportive, and I don't feel any fear that, oh gosh, I best not say this, or I best not stick up for myself because they won't like it. They are brilliant, and they stick up for me probably more than I stick up for myself. So that's important as well, to feel that you've got that confidence. But also, a lot of women I've found that are 20, 30 years cool, they're quite hard on junior women coming through the ranks. I remember when I was a paralegal, a senior partner, a woman, looked at me and said, are you going to, and then inserted a name of a bar, a local bar, you going to such and such place at lunch? I went, no, why? She went, oh, I thought you'd be going there to hand in your CV because you look like a waitress today, so you may as well go and be a waitress. And this was from a partner of a big law firm who's a woman. And I just think we should be helping each other. You should be empowering me to try and be the best female lawyer I can be. Yeah. And you're putting me down, and it just, it knocked me for six, really.
It does.
So it comes from both women and men, and I think it hurts more when it comes from a woman.
Yeah, I think it does, because I think, well, there's a minority, especially in the legal industry, of women at a leadership level. So I think when you are a woman at leadership in the legal industry, or even in the corporate realm, or of any industry, when there's an underrepresentation, you should be using that. There is an onus on you to actually encourage and promote younger women in that profession and mentor them if need be.
Exactly, foster and nurture their development. Don't put them down. I mean, we've got enough people putting us down outside of a small collegiate, what should be a family of female lawyers. I didn't understand at that point why we weren't just all rooting for each other and supporting each other. And she was putting me down again in front of an office full of people. So it's just so many things that happen aren't right, and they need to be called out as not being right. But it's hard to do when you're in a situation where you feel there's a power imbalance.
And so how old are you now again? Sorry, Grace.
Now I'm 26.
And over the course, I mean, probably the last couple of months have been a little bit of a whirlwind for you, because I've literally seen you've become somewhat of an influencer in the legal world.
Fine, hilarious.
So, I mean, do you think, after I've seen you on Sky News, BBC, you've done your TED Talk, do you think that you'll continue advocating and taking on as many cases as possible? Has it changed any of your aspirations moving forward of where you want to be in the next couple of years?
No, it's just empowered me to keep speaking. So I will take any opportunity I can to speak about these issues, because they're important. They're not just important to me as a young female, they're important to people, and we should be looking at it as a social issue rather than a gender issue. In regards to my career, I will keep taking cases. I will take as many cases as I can in order that I can still properly devote time to my client. That's not going to change. And my career aspirations are still the same. My short-term goal is that I want to keep building a strong practice, and I want to be recognised and instructed and build a good team of solicitors that choose me to take on their cases.
Oh, well, if only there was more people like you in the industry, there probably would be a shift in attitude and everything else. But thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today.
No, thank you for having me.
It's been a good insight, I think, to see, because obviously when I recruit in the legal industry, it's majority of the time it's never barristers, it's always solicitors. And it's so easy for me to offer advice for them to have an attitude shift and a change of how they change the organisation to monitor hours and billables in a flexible way. But just can't be done with barristers, and it's hard. And how do you do that? How do you ease back in and promote women having families and whatnot? But it definitely needs to be a talking point. And I think the more people that talk about it, the more ideas will get floated. And with technology improving and everything else, there should be a shift. And I think COVID had a little bit of an impact and did shift people's attitudes as well. So
absolutely, it gave the world an insight that we can actually work from home, and we can still be as productive working from home as we were in the office, if not more, because we take out a commute, we take out the social aspect, which is missed, but it is still removed. And so we've proven that that is the case. And so hopefully this will be the start of a shift to more flexible working.
Yeah.
And so that can be that more healthy, organic balance between a work life and a personal life.